still be your fifth ever on the 30th? Or you should be.
I think so. They're not moving up until June, 1st of June. So that'll be a while before.
Let's wait on you.
And I asked them what they want to do, Andrew and Waylon. You know, if they wanted to stay down in the class or move up to teens.
Yeah, regular efficiency class.
Well, it's been taught, you know, doing junior high class, but I don't know. Then it's
How many there are? Yeah.
the only problem is it's Waylon and Andrew, and then most of them are already in the high school class. So I don't think the ones that are there will want to move down to a junior high that are already in the high school class.
Yeah.
So we've got Andrew.
But if we don't start with one, it'll always be that one.
Yeah.
You know, like always, their mission to come back.
I
What
mean,
if you, so, well, how many are going into fifth round? Like, could you make it where, so we could have a 50 session?
Just tell Bailey not to let them in. Kick them out, like, no, y'all can't come to this class. Don't care what they want.
we're in fifth or fourth semester.
Mello will take care of
Yes, I did.
All right, y'all. We got any prayer requests to start out?
Our teacher.
Then we can do it. But then who's going to? You're my, third one, crazy.
I like fifth and sixth grade.
My dad's
We'll talk about it.
has some kidney stone.
Who you wanna see?
Glenn's at home.
Yeah.
Crazy prayer request. How long has it been going on?
On and off for the last week. He had it like years ago and it's just resurfaced.
Oh, so yeah,
Yeah.
that's rough.
So hopefully that will be quick.
That's rough, man.
Trying to shoot one.
You know what it is? Too much Mountain Dew.
Right, yeah. He said he was the culprit.
I would never contribute to its kidney issues.
Right.
Nope. That's rough. Okay. Anybody else prayer requests?
To mow in the job search.
Is that June?
I think he'll have to August now. But the amount that he's applied for and has heard nothing back, I don't have a lot of hope. Yes, he's in the whatever that class.
He's also both kids.
Is he mostly applying online? I mean, as far as like remote jobs, is that what he's looking for?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay.
He's applied for any job.
Okay. And he like it's his time with this company ends in August, or like what's the? Okay.
But I mean, if he found something, he'd leave now, but.
Yeah.
If he does stay till August, he does get the severance package.
Yeah.
But.
You know, I heard that NCYC's hiring interns.
We'll make that face.
He's into that.
What he needs.
Yeah.
I get hook you up. You know, I know a guy.
How is he cleaning toilets?
He's actually pretty good at that.
Not cleaning toilet, clearing toilet.
Oh. How does he work the snake tool? Is he good with that? Like, yeah.
Hey, speaking of that.
No.
I need to be with you.
You wanna be an intern?
That's weird.
I'm just not on the property. I'm gonna just be in meetings. Let you know later. Okay.
Now you gotta let the whole class know.
Moving on. Prayer requests. Anybody else? We got Glenn Tumello. Anybody else?
Graduation's coming up. Got a lot of
Yeah.
grads. Our girls are having their tonsils out into the month. Both of them. So y'all want to contribute popsicles? Come stock our freezer for us.
What's funny is Maddie's excited.
She don't know what she's gonna do.
It sounds fun though.
Disappointment starts you.
Okay, that's, oh my gosh, for the last 6 weeks, study room, Just forever.
Well, that's what,
Probably.
you know, at school, they fill out these little, what you look forward to in the summer or whatever, and she's having her tonsils out and she gets to eat lots of ice cream.
Yes.
That's, the part is the ice cream, not the tonsils, and she's excited.
How's Katie?
It's actually very good.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Right. Besides tonsillectomy, anybody else? All right. We're moving on to a new study. I'm combining the little g gods and around you since we're talking practically about the same thing. But our plan is Sunday mornings we'll be talking about nations around you more in historical perspective. There'll be a lot of Bible and application in it, but we're talking mostly about the nation that we're going to discuss. Little G Gods is going to be on Wednesday night. Hang on. On Wednesday nights, we'll get deeper into the pantheon of these gods, some of these stories that are similar to the Bible. We'll compare and contrast those. The main biggie that all the nations around them have multiple gods, and Israel has one. So how did those stories, how did those dynamics stack up? Any questions about that? Comments, concerns?
I'm sad because I teach on Wednesday nights.
Oh, we'll be streaming.
I'll be punished.
Oh, you're being punished.
Yeah, I'm gonna miss it.
Well, depending on how the class goes, you might actually be spared. Depending on how the class goes, you might actually be spared. So I'll let everybody else report back in. I will, by the way, that reminds me, I will have the notes available. I'll probably just post them in the link of the video. So if y'all want to check stuff out after, we got all kinds of links and you can fact check me. Basically, there's way more stuff here than we're going to be able to cover. So if you want to dive into the rabbit hole, I'll make that stuff available to you where you can just dig in to your heart's content. But that's kind of that's the good and bad part of this is there's a lot of content to cover, but the bad part is we can't cover all of it. So feel free to stop me if we're going too fast. We can discuss some things, or I can do some digging for you and get that to you on the side. All right, our first nation we're going to discuss. I know you're thinking it's Egypt or like Assyria or Babylon. It's none of those. We're talking about ancient Mesopotamia. Everyone's very excited. I know. Do you remember talking about Mesopotamia in history class?
Yes.
If so, what were some highlights?
Garden.
Yep.
Hanging garden.
Hanging Garden, big deal.
Between the Tigris and the Euphrates.
Absolutely. Good. Did you actually pay attention to history class?
Love history.
No. Anything else?
That's where the promised land was, isn't it?
Between the Tigris and the Euphrates?
Yeah.
Yes. And not just biblical accounts, but multiple accounts. Really, even scientifically, and we're talking about like from a scientific point of view, they'll suggest it's much longer, whatever. I'm not going to get into that, but they even say that between those two areas was a perfect place for life to begin. There are only a few places on Earth that were like that. One of them being the Nile River and the Fertile Crescent between the Tigris and Euphrates, and somewhere in Asia, I believe. But a lot of people believe this is one of the first places that life really began. That's both biblically and like biologically. Like it's a perfect place for life to start.
That's where that evil quinoa came from.
The what now?
The evil quinoa. That's where it came from.
Evil quinoa? Morgan's giving you a face you can't see. Morgan's giving you a face you can't see.
Nah, they did like I think started wheat or something there because they had the canals. They built all these canals and all this. It was pretty advanced for its time.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's
irrigation.
That's mostly what we're going to talk about today. This is, and I want to show you guys this. This may or may not go very well. I'm not sure. Okay, I want to show y'all this map, and I'll post this in the link of this video too. This is a pretty cool tool because it goes through world history, and you can dive into Middle East history, you can dive into Native American history, whatever you want to do. But it kind of shows you the timeline of what we know happened in history. So you'll notice here, there are two civilizations popping up, one of them being Mesopotamia, the other being Egypt. You notice that one's significantly bigger than the other? Like, we can zoom into Egypt, but we can't really see anything in Egypt. So for a long time, people thought that the Egyptians were the first and most advanced civilization in history. Until we looked at Mesopotamia and we're like, oh, they were doing irrigation stuff and they were doing all kinds of technological advancements that nobody else had seen before. So this is really and literally the first civilization collectively on Earth. There were people before this, and there were like communes and things like that. But as far as civilization goes and an empire, this is the first one we've ever seen. So you think about how ancient the Egyptians are and the long story history of Egypt. Egypt was still super young when Mesopotamia was like going like pretty effectively. So that being said, Mesopotamia is pretty much like the OG empire, even though it's kind of been somewhat forgotten history for different reasons. So about 6,000 BCE, several early farming settlements began to emerge. That's before officially it kind of collects into Mesopotamia. But Mesopotamia is the oldest civilization in human history. We look at this world map here. You can kind of go into this. It's pretty neat. You can go into some details about this. It might not pull up. There we go. But we have this fertile crescent right here. Not a fertile crescent, just between the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. By the way, do we have any biblical tie-in with these ideas? Oldest civilization history, where we see life really start to pick up.
Garden of Eden.
What?
Yeah.
All right, let's turn to Genesis chapter 2. Genesis 2, and someone get for us verses 10 through 14. Genesis 2, 10 through 14.
A river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and there it divided and became 4 rivers. The name of the first is the Pishon. It is the one that flowed around the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of the land is good. How do you say that? Delium?
Sure.
And onyx stone are there. The name of the second river is the Gihon. It is the one that flowed around the whole land of Cush. And the name of the third river is the Tigris, which flows east of Assyria. And the fourth river is the Euphrates.
So I forgot to put this picture up there, might be. But it's sort of, this picture I had estimates where these other 2 rivers are, because the other 2 mentions aren't there anymore, which is not uncommon for rivers, right? I mean, we've even seen the past 1,000 years, you'll see evidence of rivers, and then they're just gone. So anyway, but supposedly some of them flowed over here. One of them flowed back over here to Elam. But again, the 2 biggies, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Supposedly somewhere in between here is where the Garden of Eden started. What's the story with the Garden of Eden? Like how do we get from the garden to all these cities? What happens?
With the fall and babies.
Do what?
The fall and then babies.
Yep. So get out of the
Not necessarily
garden.
in that order, but.
Not necessarily. Yeah. So get out, and then particularly it was take care of the land and multiply, and
Now you're gonna have to work the land.
yeah.
Which you
Now
don't have to do that.
exactly right. So before this, there's no need for a city. There's no need for industrialization. There's no need for storing up grain and all these innovations that we have now, because it's all provided. Now we have to figure out and spread and figure out how we're going to survive in this world by ourselves. God's still providing, but like we're in distance because of the sin problem. So then you see all of these cities pop up. And I don't know, can y'all see this at all? Hang on. That's not going to get any better. Do y'all see any of these? Any of these familiar to you? Or as I'm going to say, because I don't know, because again, it's this.
No.
Like I have to feel like I'm fancy. So you can say like a caveman, I'll say and feel good about my life. That's, What's so special about or
Abraham, yeah.
Abraham? We're going to talk about that next class, but Abraham comes from the city of Ur, which is interesting because it's saying that the Israelite spawning place or their heritage is from Mesopotamia, which is kind of interesting to point out. So humanity, has been hanging out here, and there's another sort of Tower of Babel we're going to talk about that God smacks it down, says, get out of here. Then he calls Abraham to go from this place to another place he's never been to go start another country. The people that I'll set out for you in the land and nation. Questions so far?
Why'd you say 6,000 BCE?
That's what the internet said.
Yeah, that's
I'm
right.
reading off a script from the internet. I know. And so through this class, by the way, you're going to hear there's a young earth creation argument, old earth, whatever. I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole because I ain't smart. All right. I'm telling you from the 6,000 part was just to show that's when really we started to write stuff down as a people. That's what that is. So you can say 4,000 if you like. You can say 3,000. That's fine. I wasn't there, so I don't know when it happened. Yep.
My only thing is, all right, so worldwide flood.
Yep.
Changes the structure of the face of the earth, we would have to assume. So how do we know that that's the same spot for the Garden of Eden prior, geographically after?
That's a great question for someone smarter than me.
Yeah, I don't,
I'm not smarter than you, but I do have my answer.
Which
where it
is?
Is that when it is written down that it was the Tigris and Euphrates, these rivers have been named post-flood as Tigris and Euphrates. And so when the book is written, he's talking about things that you can physically go and see at that point in time. And so, if it were different pre-flood, which I believe it definitely was different pre-flood, but he wouldn't be trying to locate it using accurate locations.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah.
And so the claim is that's generally but see, that's what's interesting is he can say, okay, that's generally the area. It may not have looked like that before, which makes perfect sense. But then it's also like we're saying, oh, but this is the perfect setting for life to arise. Well, that's not how it was when life arose.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
so it
or it's
doesn't
a
matter.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Or what we're seeing now or back then is a long gone remnant of what it was, and now it's receding. But yeah. Yeah, so we are going to talk about the flood as well because the Mesopotamians did have their own flood story, which we'll compare. By the way, you'll notice I'm going to shirk all of these scientific questions because IDK. All right, so I'm mostly focused on what the Bible says compared to their stuff. If you are a scientific person, I'm happy to give the floor to you. But just know, any scientific question you throw at me, I'm going to do a matrix move and dodge them. And sometimes get hit by them and need to be recovered, so that's fine.
So you want to talk about Pangea? We want to talk about that?
Pangea?
Yeah.
Flood something.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, somebody flood. I don't know, broke it up. Sure.
Good.
Yeah. Good? I'm not saying you can't ask those questions. I'm just saying I'm not going to be helpful. Is that fair? I'm trying to level set with you. All right.
well,
All right. Yep.
it's totally an argument for a localized flood, though.
Yes, it is.
Like people
Yeah.
make the argument that Noah's flood was just a localized flood, and you can make that
You
not
can-
from the text, but
No.
if you piece all of that together right there, then you have that.
And we are going to talk about the, if y'all have heard the Epic of Gilgamesh, yeah, that is the Mesopotamian, really Akkadian flood story. And that's a huge similarity we find in the Bible and from kind of the roots that they share. So we'll go into that too as we go along and compare and contrast those. Speaking of technological advancements though, and somewhat flooding, you do have a lot of interesting agricultural advancements, which do end up helping these cities sort of carry along. This guy is really cool. It's Table of Gods. I don't know if y'all ever heard of it, but he takes ancient recipes that we know and kind of makes them into modern stuff. But this is just a little idea of how the Sumerians and the Mesopotamians, what they would eat.
Regional cuisine comes to mind when you think about onions. Onions are so widely used, it's hard to link them to any kitchen today. But the correct answer is ancient Mesopotamia. Onions were not only used in savory dishes, but also in desserts. In fields where vegetables, legumes, and herbs were cultivated, 127 rows of onions were grown, compared to 15 rows of coriander and 11 of chickpeas. Furthermore, onions functioned as a currency in some cities. In Nippur, for example, often workers were paid onions along with salt, reminding me of my grandpa who eats raw onions with salt for breakfast. Onions remained popular in ancient Mesopotamia, inspiring me to recreate a baked onion recipe for my upcoming cookbook, Table of Gods.
Then we got this.
Ancient Sumerian myth, a fight breaks out between grain and sheep. The two of them insult each other and argue over who's better. Sheep tells grain the baker mixes her, flattens her, and throws her in the oven. Grain tells sheep that her innards are carried off by people in the marketplace. And so the debate continues until the god of wisdom, Ea, has to settle it. Ea declares that grain and sheep should stop fighting, that they should be sisters and stand together. But of the two, grain is greater. Despite Ea's judgment, we've decided to restore equality in this recipe. Here, grain's kernels and sheep's yogurt are equally important. Each depends on the other while also bringing out the best in one another, like true sisters. In an
So this is kind of cool. It's just kind of showing you. I wanted to show that one because even their food was tied up in their mythology. So it's a kind of a parable, but you have two of their biggest products agriculturally, grain and sheep, and they get into an argument about which one's better because that's what they ate. So they're kind of arguing between, and then a god of agriculture has to step in and solve the argument. This is kind of interesting because it also shows how they treated ancient gods. So the idea to us that like our God would literally eat a sacrifice is kind of foreign and weird, especially when you consider if Jesus himself was crucified and he was sort of a sacrifice. You're like, so did God eat his own son? We get a different vibe in the Hebrew Bible than we do from the pagan stuff. So Mesopotamian, they believed, and they actually spent a ton of their money towards bakers and agriculture to make a ton of food to put on the altar for these gods so they could eat it. Like they literally believed that just like themselves, their gods needed to eat. And it's almost like the Santa Claus thing where you have the kid. Does anyone believe in Santa Claus? I have to, I have to do it. I'm sorry, chat. Where you set the cookies out for the kid. Santa Claus is going to come, and then when he gets there, it's just crumbs. If you're a good like stage performer, you'll have crumbs and like a note and stuff.
Lights.
Do what now?
He takes real lights.
Yeah, like there's one like left with a huge bite in it, and he's like, ho, ho, ho. Okay, right. So the same kind of thing with the gods. There were a couple of stories too, not necessarily Mesopotamian, but where the priest would come, like they would set the thing and then people would leave and the priest would come and eat the stuff. And then, but ironically in Israelite religion, it was like you prepare the sacrifice, but you eat it. Like God doesn't have to eat it. God doesn't need anything. Like God doesn't need your oil. God doesn't need your food and your lambs. Instead, you make it as an offering and then you eat it. Does that make sense? Questions or comments about that? Bless you. Questions or comments? So for them, their food and agriculture was very much a religious thing. Like it wasn't just, oh, let's eat. It was like they had bakers dedicated to just feeding the gods, which ironically they would just end up eating and pretend it was like their gods. Everybody good? All right, I wanted to show you that kind of stuff. This guy's really cool, by the way. It's a Table of Gods if you want to check him out. But you'll notice here, we had Mesopotamia as a big blob, but instead of like a specific name for this empire, we just have city-states. Why do you think that is?
It was no real king, was there?
Not really.
Yeah.
So before, this is kind of cool. This Mesopotamia sort of existed before empires did, which is pretty neat to say because we're so used to, the Greek Empire and the Roman Empire and, all these empires. These guys were so ancient that their cities alone stood as their own states. And they had autonomy. So like, you would pass back and forth between each other, but I ruled my own place and you ruled your own place and we were separate. Now there were wars to try to like take over different cities, but for the longest time they just existed as city-states. You'll hear the same kind of thing talk about ancient Greece, about the Greeks were city-states. That's what that means, is that Sparta was so powerful and never got conquered until later, so they were their own city-state. They considered that their own country, basically. And Athens was so powerful, it was its own city-state, but they were autonomous. They were all Greek, but really it wasn't until Alexander the Great later that they all became under one banner. But what that meant is that someone had to come in, do a little whooping and say, we're all under one flag now. But these guys for the longest time were just independent. They were so big and powerful they could exist in the same area, be considered some of the same geographic people, but not of the same nation. Does that make sense? Speaking of empires, what potential problems could you see? I guess what benefit does an empire provide to different peoples that you might have missed in this system?
Protections?
Yep, protection. So we have a nationalized army. In this case, it's like if Uruk goes down, it goes down. You're like, well, nobody's coming for you, so you're on your own. You have anybody else? Think about how, like modern nations, how we correspond with each other and how we're able to do trade, things like that. What are some gaps we got to fill in?
We have shared resources, so everybody wouldn't have necessarily the same things.
Yeah. So trade's a big one.
So trade's going,
Yeah, trade's a big one. So what are some pitfalls to trade if you exist in different entities?
You might be at a war over
only
something.
trading locally.
Trade locally, you might be at war.
Yeah.
So alliances, Ur is fine with Uruk, but not another city-state. Can you trade with them? How are you going to move the stuff? In classic libertarian fashion, who's going to build the roads, right? Who's going to build the roads, right? So that's a problem. Language. Do we assume they all speak the same language? Maybe similar.
A couple chapters.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly right. So do they share a language? Are there interpreters? Again, we're just now starting to write stuff down. Like, we're just now taking language and putting it on clay or papyrus or whatever they're using. So that's the kind of vibe we get. It's not until we get to the Akkadian Empire where a king from up north comes down and takes over all these cities and kind of makes it into the first pseudo-empire called the Akkadian Empire. Anybody ever heard of that, the Akkadian Empire? Especially in biblical text, you'll hear a professor of biblical studies, and he'll say, he'll reference an Akkadian writing. That's what that is, like early Proto-Babylonian, this kind of thing. Questions so far? Am I breezing through stuff too fast? I'm having a great time. I don't know if you're having a great time, but if you can't tell, I'm very, very excited. I want to look at a few of these cities from a biblical perspective. So we have Ur, which we talked about. It's Abraham's home. He's called in Genesis 11 to go leave that, Genesis 12, Genesis 15. And then what's interesting, I'd like to turn to Nehemiah chapter 9. Someone get for us Nehemiah chapter 9 and verse 7. Nehemiah chapter 9 and verse 7. I thought this was relevant too for what we're studying in the auditorium too. Nehemiah chapter 9 and verse 7.
You are the Lord the God. You are the Lord the God who chose Abram and brought him out of Ur of the Chaldeans and gave him the name Abraham.
So even then, they're sort of building everything back in Nehemiah. We're recounting through our history. So even like back there, they're acknowledging there was this place and you called him from it, and that's where we spawned from. Like we sort of, in a weird way, we shared that with them. He adds here, or of the who?
Chaldeans.
Or of the Chaldeans. Think about all of the nations that rise from this area. So you have Chaldeans, we talked about the Akkadian Empire, the Babylonian Empire is right here. This is modern day Iraq, by the way. So you have the Babylonian Empire, the Assyrian Empire eventually takes this over. Then that's the Neo-Babylonian Chaldean Empire. Later on, we have the Persian Empire. Then we have the Greek Seleucid Empire. Then we have the Parthian Empire. Eventually, this spawns the Islamic Empire. All of this from right here. Thoughts about that? Comments or observations? Why, and I don't want to get too much into modern times, but why would there continue to be a strain and yet a family bond in history between the peoples who were here and everybody else in the region?
Probably all came from the same place.
Yeah. It's like as your family sort of splinters and grows distant and there's a problem here and a problem there, and now that side of the family doesn't talk to this side of the family and vice versa. That's sort of what we got here. Like almost everyone in this area acknowledges, yeah, this is like where we're from, and they all sort of like claim, that's like our home, or that's like where we came from, and that becomes a problem, just like a regular family, because you're like, well, that's
grandma's house.
yeah, that's where I'm more of this place than you are, that kind of thing. So you have that same thing going on today. Comments?
How does Jacob and Esau factor into this?
Yep.
I mean, that's where the big identified split.
Yep.
Happened. There were skirmishes back then, but the Jacob and Esau thing is.
Yeah, it's where, even early on, this happens. He calls Abraham, already there's a split.
Yeah.
So that is, oh man, what's her name, Morgan? I forgot her mom's name. The mama of Ishmael. Hagar, thank you. So Hagar takes her baby, where's she gonna go? She can't live with them. She might go back to east. Right? So, and again, there's micro fractures all along the story that lead to a grand conflict that's still ongoing. Yeah. Questions? Other questions, comments? All right, a couple of these here. So let me see if we can find one. I did not put I forgot to add a image here that I downloaded, but there's one city here that's called Babel. Does that sound familiar?
Babel.
Yeah, Babel. Again, we say Babel. I'm going to say Babel because this, right? I want to feel like I'm important. So Babel, sure. Babal, no, it's not. It's Babel, but close. So this is a story that we'll get to eventually of the Tower of Babel, but that's one of these places here, and eventually it becomes the city of Babylon. Same exact place, right? So again, we have these shades of the same cities. There is one called Erech, and it's mentioned in the Bible and the prophets. Erech, that is actually the city of Uruk, just pronounced differently. So that's again in some of the prophets. You have a city of Akkad, which is Acadia. This is another one. I can't remember if it's on here or not. But anyway, I think it's way up here is where Acadia is. But you have that going on in the prophets. You've got, this is one that's interesting. It's called Kalna, which is the prophets mentioned. You go back to Kalna, which is actually the city of Nippur, which I can't remember. Yeah, here we go. Nippur is right here. So even after the Mesopotamian Empire, the Akkadian Empire is kind of done away with, these cities sort of remain as relevant hotspots in the prophets. They're still referencing these cities like in their modern time. And then one of these I want to look at is Isaiah chapter 10. Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 9. And whoever wants to get that for us. Isaiah chapter 10 and verse 9.
Is not Calno like Carchemish? Is not Hamath like Arpad? Is not Samaria like Damascus?
So there's a bunch of cities that he's pointing out that this is either, they believe that Kalno is one of these cities back here, and I forget how they relabel it, but it's one of these cities back here. So again, even in their modern time, they're still referencing these ancient cities as kind of a callback to where they come from. Any thoughts, comments about that so far? All right. It's kind of open for more conversation, but.
Well, so with this, he's talking to the people of Abraham at this point, and they are in the promised land, but he's still calling on their roots, not just like these random cities that you've never heard of, but he's saying like, is not your current city just like the city that you came from, that Abraham was pulled out of? You're supposed to be a different people and do things differently.
Yeah.
And he goes on to say, shall I not do the same in Jerusalem and her idols? Because he's saying, I've gone to all these places and you've been there. You know what I'm talking about. And all these places are ridden with false gods. Why are you also ridden with false gods?
That's right. Yeah. That's his point he's trying to make. And it's interesting. He calls on these ancient cities at that time, which is crazy to think about. When Isaiah called on these cities, they were ancient history.
Yeah.
They were ancient. So these texts that we're reading are ancient. They're way past 2,000 years old. But when Isaiah coined these writings, they were already like 2,000 or 3,000 years old at that time, which is kind of a weird thing for history to think about. Like I heard something the other day that when Alexander the Great got into Egypt, the pyramids that he saw were older to him than the Greek Empire is to us. If that makes sense. That's 5,000 plus years ago, but to him it was like 2,000 years already removed. So again, this is like ancient, and again, a lot of this we're not going to really know. We're not really going to be able to pinpoint this exactly happened this time because again, they just now started writing stuff down. Like, well, very famously, maybe y'all know, who is often, attributed to be the first civilization to write stuff down, traditionally. Anybody know?
Sumeria.
But that's what it is. Yeah, right here. But the other one,
Chinese.
the other one before that was China, and it was Egypt. I want to give y'all a little, some of the research here. China had their first writing before 1250 BC. So that's still a long time ago, right? Egypt, who we commonly consider, they were like the first ones to write it down, and typically it was hieroglyphs. Like still, you can go now and there's like it's carved into clay kind of stuff. They had their writing established before 3000. Again, that's ancient. That's 5,000 years ago. Mesopotamia started writing stuff down before 3400. So 400 years before, and again, I want to go back to this if I can. 400 years before Egypt was even a thing, right? Mesopotamia already had this on lock and writing stuff down for records and events. So literally, this is the most ancient writing that we've ever seen, like in the world, besides like maybe caveman drawings. But even then, it was like sticks on a wall, which was the same kind of cuneiform that they would do. We're going to talk about the later on the Law of Hammurabi. Anybody heard of that Law of Hammurabi? That was Akkadian. A lot of that they believe influenced and really sort of governed the Middle East for a long time. It is you see some stuff in the Law of Moses too about it. But even if you look at ancient Mesopotamian cuneiform, their letters, and you compare it to Hebrew and Arabic and a lot of Middle Eastern languages, even sometimes Indian, they look strikingly similar. Like you can take one and like kind of morph them into what they would eventually become. So this is like the most ancient writing that the world has ever seen. So that being said, there are historical gaps that we're just not going to know. And we just have to be okay with that. I'll give you an example. Genesis 1 through 12, or really Genesis 1 through 6, starts out with the creation of humankind, and then it goes into the fall of humankind, and then it goes into the first murder, and then all of a sudden Abel's somewhere and he has a wife in the city. Or not Abel, sorry, Cain. Sorry, thank you. I got the face. Cain murdered his brother and he's in a city somewhere with a wife. Questions about that? Like, are there any gaps there that the Bible just assumes you can fill in the blank?
Where all the people come from.
There's a city. Did he just like spawn that? And there's really, I mean, the Bible just lays it out there for you like that. It doesn't make an explanation. It's just like, that's what happened. And you're like, oh, okay. So again, just to show you, this stuff is ancient. There are probably gaps because they're just now starting to write stuff down that I'm not privy to. I'm not going to know it because the Bible just doesn't give it to me. Now we can make explanations. We can go into apologetics and that's fine. But like, as far as the text is concerned, that's literally what it says. And then again, just to prove that's ancient stuff, that maybe there are gaps there we just aren't privy to. Questions or comments about that?
Cities are terrible.
Do what?
Cities are terrible.
Cities are terrible. Yep. And we're talking about cities, so you'll get your fill. Questions or comments about this? Have I lost anybody, or does anybody have any burning questions we need to discuss? All right, this was the intro. We're going to get into, this Wednesday, we're going to get into an overview of their pantheon, an overview of the biblical view of what gods were, and then some comparisons and contrasts from their gods to the God of Israel, and sort of how all that kind of plays out. Closing thoughts? Hope you had a good nap, and let's pray before we go in the auditorium. Let's pray together. Father, thank you for the time you've given us. We're thankful for the opportunity to be here, to learn a little bit about your word and the grand scheme of history that you prepared for us. We can be at this place and time, and we can be saved through your Son. Lord, we know that there are many who are struggling, many who are suffering right now. We pray that you would be with them, that we would be your good servants to reach out to them in certain way that we can. Father, we're mindful of those who couldn't be here with us today, whether they chose that or whether they just simply couldn't be here. Pray that you would care for them. We would watch over them as well. Thank you for Christ and everything he means to us. Praise thanks in his name. Amen. Thanks, y'all.
Have you seen that? Ancient Mesopotamia song, Soldier Boy?
No.
It is so good.
I should have played it.
It's fantastic. It's like 3 minutes long.
That's awesome. That's
That's
awesome.
the chorus. It's beautiful.
I should have had that.
Look it up. You will die.
I'll do it next time. That's awesome.
Sorry.
So I'm fact checking myself to be sure.